my daughter was home from college. She was 19. It was 2007. And she's like, "Hey, mom, I'm going to go out with some friends tonight." And I'm like, "Cool, see you at midnight." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll see you at midnight." And she was appalled that I had the audacity to impose a curfew on her at 19. And I said, I can't sleep until I know that you're home safe. And so you need to be home by midnight. And reluctantly, she agreed.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you hit the subscribe button, it'll help us out a lot. Thanks again.
What does a literary agent do?
Sure. Well, for authors that are looking to score a traditional publishing deal, so they would like to be published with a publisher that only accepts agented manuscripts. Basically, a literary agent is kind of like that bridge. So authors query me with their query letter, their synopsis, their, first 5 pages of their manuscript, if it's a novel, or a full, if it's a picture book. And then if it's something that I rep and I feel passionate that I can sell, then I sign them as a client. And then I am able to open that door to publishers that otherwise would be closed to unagented authors.
Now, uh, I mean, are you getting a wide range of like people that have never written before and or people that have? I mean, how do you weed out? I mean, do you just say, you know what, this is just not good enough? I mean,
Well,
do you?
typically agents open for submissions in a window period. So, for example, the first time that I opened for submissions, I received probably almost 848 hours. Yes. Now, I had done a
Wow.
lot of advertising about what I was looking for. I was looking to rep picture books, I was looking to rep YA, and most agents have what's called a manuscript wish list. If you Google the agent's name and manuscript wish list, and then that will come up, and you can see specifically what they're looking for. So I am currently closed for submissions right now, but when I do open back up, I will be looking for thrillers. And specifically, if you look at my manuscript wish list, you can look at what kind of thrillers that I will be looking for. I'm about to probably sign 2 more picture book authors in the next week or so. So my picture book slots will be pretty full. But it's really helping be that bridge from author to being published.
Now, you're the company again. Correct me if I'm mispronouncing it. Purcell.
Yes, the Purcell
Purcell.
Agency.
Now, where did they go? Did they go to that website? Did they go to your website?
Well, you're going to go to if you're an author, you probably have Query Tracker, which is where you're tracking where you're sending your queries to. So that would be where you would go to follow like when I'm going to be open. And hopefully, maybe in May or June, I'm going to open back up. I was open for thriller queries a couple months ago, and I had some great ones, and there was one I really wanted, and he got 4 offers of representation. And so he went with the agent that had a similar vision for his work that he did. So that was the one that got away. So I am still looking for something in that space specifically.
So there's competition. In other
Yes.
words, they're not just coming to you; they're bouncing around.
Absolutely. And there are a ton of resources on my website. So I have polishing your submission packet before querying. I have some self editing guides that I've created specifically on the things that I've seen in submissions that could be improved. So I would highly recommend authors check that out and really go through your submission before you start querying it, because typically you don't get a second chance to get in front of an agent's eyes.
Now, are you like I think you said 800 hours or what have you? You're reading all that yourself?
No. Well, what you're reading is first the query.
Okay.
And I have on my website the specific structure that a query should be in. It's a very simple template. And so the agent's going to read that and see, is this something that I'm repping? Do I have something already that's very similar to this? Is this something that I'm not the best agent for? So I'm not the best agent for high concept fantasy or sci-fi. And, so that's kind of like the first place that you look, and that's where a lot of agents can just go ahead and give quick passes. And trust me, if you're an author and an agent isn't the right agent for you, you want a quick pass so you can move on. And then at that point, then I would, if it's something I'm looking for, then I would look at those opening pages, just see, is the story starting in the right place? What's the quality of the craft of writing on a line level? And so you can typically tell that in like a page or two. And if the first couple of pages draw you in, then you keep reading, and eventually, hopefully, pulls me in enough that I request the full from you.
So let's get to your book, Worth It.
Mhm.
Not your first book, correct?
Correct. It's my first novel.
First novel. Okay. I mean, in the age of the internet, people can just Google that and get the idea. But for the sake of this, podcast, what is it about? What made you want to write this?
Sure. Well, it all goes back to a letter, ironically enough. And I was thinking about this today prior to chatting with you. So, this book is inspired by my lived experience in the late 80s as a teen that was homeless, then living in poverty, eventually pregnant, and with the hopes of a future looking very bleak. And that did change, obviously. And that baby that I had is now a 37-year-old board certified elder law attorney in the state of Florida. And I had a
Nice.
20-plus-year career as an educator, as a media specialist and television production teacher, and now as a literary agent. But the genesis comes back to just the genesis of any story to me is always so fascinating. But I had never planned to write this story. My daughter was home from college. She was 19. It was 2007. And she's like, "Hey, mom, I'm going to go out with some friends tonight." And I'm like, "Cool, see you at midnight." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll see you at midnight." And she was appalled that I had the audacity to impose a curfew on her at 19. And I said, "I can't sleep until I know that you're home safe. And so you need to be home by midnight." And reluctantly, she agreed. But after that, when she left, I got to thinking that there was so much about my life that I had not shared with her. Most of it because it wasn't age appropriate at the time for her to know some of the traumatic things that her biological father had been privy to in my life. But I'm like, it's time for her to know. And so I wrote her a 2-page letter, kind of detailing some of that, skimming over some of the ugliest parts, but at least hinting that they were there, because my goal was for her to understand why I was such a parent that cared and wanted to put things in place to keep my daughter safe, because there was no one when I was 17, 18, 19 doing anything to keep me safe.
Mhm.
And so I wrote that letter, 2 pages, and then I put a cover letter on it because I'm like, I don't want her to cold read this and not have a clue. She needs to have a decision, kind of like a content note and a query. So I actually still have that letter. It's right here. I won't bother reading it to you, but
Mhm.
it reminds me of why I wrote this. And so I
Okay.
snuck it in her backpack. And the next day she drove back to college and called me crying and saying, "I had no idea. Thank you for sharing this with me." And we've pretty much been best friends ever since. So after that, I decided to expand because the emotion that she felt from that, I thought maybe there are other girls out there that need to hear this type of message, that, you can triumph over a challenge and you can change the course of your life. You're not defined by this moment in time. And so I started it. I started pinning it in my library behind my circulation desk as
Mhm.
memoir,
Nice.
but it just wasn't landing for me as memoir for many, many, many reasons. So what I did, and I call this fictionalizing your past trauma, is that, you know turn it into a fictional story that you get to, be behind the steering wheel of what happens to these characters. And especially if the bad guy doesn't get what they deserve, then you can make sure they do.
How much of it is what's the word? Dramatized or not dramatized? I mean, it's about your story,
Mhm.
so to speak. But is there any added drama that just for the sake of storytelling?
Absolutely. So I am a big fan of the Save the Cat story structure. If you're not familiar with that,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I got it right there.
right. Well, a lot of authors aren't.
Yeah,
But once I started digging into the craft of writing on a line level and structurally, I really felt like that was the best format for me to use, the best structure. So I started deconstructing the memoir and putting into that. And organically, there were characters that had to disappear. There were characters I had to combine. There were elements of story structure that weren't present in my memoir because it just didn't happen that way. And one of the biggest things that I did was, in my real lived experience, I was in that. Can you say bad words on this show?
sure.
I was in that hellhole for 5 years, and I didn't want that to be my main character's journey. I wanted her to come to the realization that she was worth more much quicker than I did in my real life. And so I really tightened the structure, which helped with the pacing, etc. And the story takes place in the late 80s, after in Central Florida, after the aftermath of back-to-back citrus freezes that crippled the citrus industry and sent this small town into economic just turmoil. And that's true. And so
Okay.
that's kind of the backdrop that this family begins to just implode because they moved to this town to be part of the booming citrus industry, and then now within a couple of years it's gone, and so the whole town was basically in turmoil. But we really hyper focus on this one girl's experience and how eventually she climbs out of that. But as far as like how much is the emotion, every emotion is 100% real. There are some characters that, like I said, that had to disappear for story structure, and some characters that I combined, etc. But I think when you really hone in on a story structure, it helps you make those decisions. And also, if you have a story that you want to tell and you're concerned about memoir is a tough sell. I know I listened to your interview with Amanda Quick, which was fascinating.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
and, but most of us don't have that big of a story to tell, even
Right.
though it's big to us. And so without a huge platform or, things like that, I have one memoirist that I rep, but it's a tough sell to get memoir out there. Um, and also there's some legalities involved that I did not want to have to worry about. So I could change character names and places and, that sort of thing. And actually kind of fictionalize this part of my life that I don't regret because it made me who I am today. But I could wrap it up in fiction and kind of put that piece of my life a little bit distant.
Now, what genre? I mean, young adult, or how would it fall under? I mean, anybody could read it, I'm
Yeah.
assuming,
Yeah. It
but
would be young adult, subgenre. You could classify it as historical, issue driven, a little bit of a thriller element in there. But young adult is definitely the age range. Most of the readers have been adult. And I'm excited actually because next month I'm going to be presenting uh, in the hometown where this story takes place, which I did fictionalize the hometown, but it's still the hometown. So that's going to be super fun to kind of go back where I grew up and where I was a librarian in that public school for many, many, many years. And so that's going to be fun because there is some, even though it is a story of a challenging time in this young girl's life, there are a lot of positives. And one of the things that I really tried to highlight was the people in the community that were encouraging, even though this main character did not believe a lot of their encouraging words at the time. And sometimes it was strangers drifting in and out of her life, giving her encouraging words. And eventually she believes them. And so there's back matter in the novel. There's an author's note to the teens in the room, and it's kind of geared toward the teens that are in crisis and don't wait as long as this main character did to reach out to someone for help. And it's to the teens that aren't in crisis, that have loving and supportive families, to how to be a good friend to someone who needs you to be a good friend that maybe be a teen in crisis. And then the biggest note is the note to the adults in the room and our responsibility as educators, as parents, as community members, to uplift the most vulnerable of us all, even if that's just a kind word and saying that you're worth more than the situation that you're in, and I have faith in you.
now the town. Can you tell us the town or
Yeah,
that you're going
it's
to?
based on the fictional town of Umatilla, Florida, which is in Central Florida. In the story, I call it North Lake. Umatilla is called like the North Lake. It is the, I think, most northern city in Lake County, Florida, and it is a very, very, very small town that was home to a booming citrus industry in the 70s and 80s, and probably even prior to that, and a citrus plant that most families had someone that worked at. And so my family moved there to be part of that industry. My father had been in the chemical industry, which was dangerous. And so we went to be part of the citrus industry with my grandparents. And again, back to back freezes kind of crippled that. And so our own family was thrust into poverty, like many other families in that area. And so there is some historical background information. And I don't try to weigh heavy into that, as this is intended for a young adult audience. And I also don't weigh heavy into the pop culture. So it feels a little more accessible to teen readers. And And I've had a lot of parents reach out to me and say, this is a book that I think every teen should read. Just because a lot of the messages are so universal, especially even in, for teens today.
Sure. Now, you actually recently, I believe, the beginning of this month, won an award, right? Tell us about that.
Yes, I did. The Florida State Book Award, which is very exciting. There's the sticker. So I
Cool.
came in bronze in the young adult category, and there was a ceremony in Tallahassee I got to attend. And it's the a book award is the book award is sponsored by Florida State University, and so recognizing Florida literature that has excelled and made a difference in people's lives, and so that was quite an honor. And to know that that work is out there. I've also partnered with a couple of local nonprofits. One is Hillsborough Teens Connect, which is a nonprofit that has teen navigators that answer the phone to teens in crisis and help point them to resources. And another is called YA by the Bay, that is a young adult literature conference where we present authors come from across the country and agents as well. And we are accessible to teens, and we teach them how to become the authors of their own life through the
Mm.
stories that we have written and workshops. And that will be taking place in September in Tampa Bay, and it's free to teens. And then we open to the public one day as well. I got to meet and hang out with R.L. Stein there the last time, which was quite
Really?
cool.
Wow.
Hmm.
Oh, cool. Now, I know on your website, I believe, or maybe it's the Purcell, if I'm saying that right, you do book trailers.
Yes. So I was the media specialist slash librarian for 20 years. And one of the other things that I did was I taught television production. And one of the assignments I would always have my students do is in groups, they would pick a book and read together like a book club and then make a book trailer for it. So that's one of the things that I've continued to do for authors is help create book trailers. I really enjoy still dipping my toes into the technology aspect of what I used to do when I was working at the school. And so I do those freelance for authors. On my website, I've got several examples, and I do more of a lot of people on TikTok are doing amazing trailers of their own, but I do more of a YouTube style, traditional type trailer that you would see, as opposed to these other younger creatives that are doing such a great job over on TikTok and Book Talk. But yeah, I
I
love.
watched them. Yeah. I watched a couple and they're very good. It's a great idea. I mean, yeah, it's like I mean, a movie trailer for a book,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I
Yeah.
think I do a presentation on this as well on how to make why you should and how to make a book trailer for your book. I think it's on my website for free. You can watch it. But up to 80% of internet consumption is video. So if you are even a querying author, it can be an excellent tool in your querying toolbox to have a link and an email to an editor or on your website for a trailer that they can watch. Actually, the publisher that I am published with watched my trailer and then was interested in reading my query and opening pages. So visuals can have a huge impact on you getting over the cross that finish line. A lot of people on Twitter do mood boards and things like that. That's another good thing to do. But just giving a visual aspect to your work can really help get you across that finish line.
Who is your publisher?
Wild Ink Publishing, they're amazing. They're a small press, and I have really enjoyed working with Wild Ink. So they've been phenomenal. So I published without an agent and then became an agent. So there are many paths to publication. And you mentioned that I'm a lover of all things autism. My youngest son is
Mhm.
autistic, and despite rhetoric going on around about autism right now, I wouldn't change a thing about him if I could. And I do have two books published through Wild Ink as well. One is a picture book called Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Understanding Autism Spectrum Disorder. So if you didn't know, Goldilocks is autistic. She has eloped from her home. She doesn't understand social norms and goes into someone's house without knocking. She has sensory sensitivities to temperature, texture, taste. So I took a lot of the qualities that a person on the autism spectrum might exhibit and gave more of those to Goldilocks. And it also has a discussion guide to use with neurotypical children to help them understand their autistic peers, friends, and neighbors, and and also a glossary of terms. And I did work with a special education teacher to create that. And then I have another nonfiction about autism called It Takes a Village: How to Build a Support System for Your Exceptional Needs Family. And that is basically a guide to help families in the beginning stages of the diagnosis navigate how to build a support system and what that can look like. Even if you feel like you don't have a support system, it's a step-by-step guide to help you build one, because there are people out there that want to be a part of your support system. You just may not have found them yet.
So, I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of to this question,
Mhm.
but what is one of the misconceptions that people that don't deal with autistic people?
I think, and this is a timely example, I think the difference between speaking and non speaking. A lot of times, non speaking autistic individuals are labeled as low functioning when that is absolutely not the truth. Many of our non speakers in the autism community are artists, writers, musicians, very intellectual. And many of our speakers struggle the most with social emotional development, sensory sensitivities, etc. So I think that's a common misconception. The phrase has been used, and I do not like functioning terms at all, but that high functioning autism ignores my struggles while low functioning autism ignores my strengths. And so I think, looking at the autistic individual as a whole, my son is 10, he is speaking. There was a time that he was non-speaking, but that wasn't the biggest issue that we had. The biggest issue was other things. And he is doing great now after years and years and years and years and years and years of of therapy and decisions and special education, and doing what our providers uh, told us to do, and listening to the people that we trusted. And actually, he just had a physical today, and he was struggling in a lot of areas. Even autism uh, can affect your physical body as well in a lot of different ways. And so last year he was having some issues with that. And today he got a clean bill of health and he was so excited. um, and autism is, I interviewed a woman from a Fortune 500 company who her goal is to recruit autistic individuals into their company. And one of the things that she and I discussed, and she had done a lot of research about autism and is an expert in the field, is that there is a growing theory that being autistic is a normal part of the human genome. So that there are going to be naturally people with different developed brains, and that it's not a disease, that it is just a normal part of human development, that some people will be born on the spectrum and some people won't. And that doesn't mean that it's not easy. It doesn't mean that it's not difficult, because it is. But my son has brought nothing but joy into our family, even in the most difficult of moments. There are those special moments that just don't exist outside of that. According to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual that diagnoses mental health disorders, autism is marked by two specific things. One is struggle in social or verbal and nonverbal communication, and then there's many criteria under that. And then the other is a tendency to have repetitive and atypical behaviors. And then there's several things under that. And within each of those two categories, a child can be level 1, 2, or 3. So you can be a 1 in verbal communication and a 3 that you don't have those repetitive and atypical behaviors. So it's different for everyone. It's looking at the whole child and the whole family and what that family needs, as opposed to some blanket, descriptor that buckets kids into some list. That really is not fair.
Mm,
Like I said.
yeah. Okay. So, back to your book. Have
Mhm.
you ever thought of it as, I mean, I think a lot of authors may think
Yeah.
this, of having it made into a movie?
Well, I did just the book, the audiobook is now out. And so that's kind of a theatrical performance in itself. The narrator was fabulous. So if you're interested, I highly recommend that you listen to a portion of her narration. I love audiobooks. And actually, I'm a finalist for an Indie Inc. Book Award for Best Audiobook of 2024. So
Nice.
I find out in September about that, but she did such a fabulous job. But I think all authors, hope that their book is one day a movie, but I'm just honored that it's out there in print. And I'm really excited that it's more accessible to other people, because it is now also in an audiobook, and you can download it from Audible, and listen to a sample. And again, the performance of the narrator was just absolutely stellar.
Who was it?
Her name is Shaylee Hannigan. So shout out to you, Shaylee. You did a fabulous job.
Nice. Any other books in the works or in your mind, at least, that, for you to write?
Yes. Actually, my colleague, Tina Swartz, who is the founder of the Purcell Agency, she and I have been doing writing sprints on Thursdays because as an agent, you sometimes feel guilty, working on your own stuff as opposed to working on your clients. But it's also important to stay in that creative space. And so we've been doing writing sprints. So today we had a writing sprint. So I worked for an hour on my own work. So my next novel is also issue driven, if that's the term that you kind of want to use for these. And it's also a girl that's living in poverty. It's loosely based on my father's life growing up in the projects of Southern Mississippi, but it's a female protagonist. And I'm really excited about it. There's a found family of barbers that take this girl in, and that's just been super fun. So it's also got a little bit of a speculative element to it, which is new for me. There is a lake called, or a river called the Singing River in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and there's a little bit of a folklore to that that I'm bringing into the novel as well. So that's been fun to do some research and kind of put myself in the time period of when my dad was growing up. So super fun.
Oh, awesome. Sounds great. Do you have a favorite book? I'm sure you've read millions of
Yes.
books, but do you have a go-to, like, oh, you got to read this book, not something current, but like a favorite book, even if it's an old classic? Do you have a favorite book?
This maybe makes me seem a little disturbed, but The Awakening by Kate Chopin is probably my favorite classic of all time. Well, my favorite young adult novel that I've recently read is written by a friend of mine. It's called Old Palmetto Drive by Essie Reed. So good, I could not put it down. And it also takes place in Florida. And she is also a Florida Book Award winner for a different book, but it's so good. Just all the Florida vibes you would want, four-wheeling through the Everglades, and it's a sapphic teen romance, and I just loved every bit of it. There's a little bit of a thriller mystery element to it as well, so it's really good.
Sweet. Okay, great. I'm going to segue into a section here, and I'm going to give you a couple of choices. You just tell me what your preference is. For instance,
Sure.
Fiction or nonfiction? I think I know the answer. But...
Fiction.
Boom.
Definitely.
Figured. Reading or writing?
Probably reading. Even though I love to write, I do a lot more reading, and I find joy helping improve other people's work. It's a lot harder to create your own words and help someone else's get better.
Understood. Should I whisper this? Dog or cat?
Absolutely dog. You see her back there, isn't she cute?
What's the name?
That's my Sandy girl. So she's a rescue
girl.
pup, and she has to be here because if she's not, she'd be barking outside the door. She's my little shadow.
No, she's she's chilling for sure. Classic. Pizza or pasta?
Oh, I heard you have an argument with the guest over this. So I'm just going to do.
Well, you know the answer.
I'm going to say pasta.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely, got to go pasta. I mean, I love pizza too, but beach or swimming pool?
I live in Florida, but I'm still going to say swimming pool because we boat a lot in the ocean. And if I can see the bottom, I'm fine. But if I can't, I am not getting in. So I'd rather swim in a pool and boat in the ocean.
All right. A little different spin. Submarine or hot air balloon?
I'm a big old scaredy cat, so I'd say neither if I can opt out.
She's opting out. That's a first on Papa Muse. Opting out. All right, no problem. I mean, I honestly, I'm going to have to go hot air balloon, submarine. I was in a submarine.
Oh, wow.
But not, I mean, it was like a museum, but it was a real submarine. I was like, man, I'm not claustrophobic, but maybe I am. It was weird. Anyway, I mean, really small.
Back when I was a child, there was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea at Disney in Orlando. It's not there anymore, but I was scared even going in that ride.
Steak or lobster?
Steak, 100%.
Wow. Snowstorm or rainstorm?
Again, living in Florida, I love our rainstorms.
Okay. All right. Lunch date or dinner date?
I'm going to go lunch date because when my son's in school, my husband and I can sneak out for lunch and not have to hire a babysitter.
There you go. I know the answer already. Audiobook or physical book?
probably audio. I don't know. I love hearing performances. I typically do both. I'll have the book and the audiobook. When I'm walking, I listen to the audio. When I'm in my house, I read the book. So I guess that would be kind of both.
So other than Google, where can the book be found? I mean, is it in libraries or?
Some, I mean, it depends. If it's not in your local library, you can request it. But obviously on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you can go to Wild Ink Publishing, wild-ink publishing.com, I think is the website. Again, you can Google that.
Yep,
But
yep.
my author website is www.amynielsen, Nielsen, author.com. And writing resources for authors that want to get across that finish line is probably where you're going to want to start. But you can also see, I do some freelance editing. I don't do fulls. I do freelance editing for submission packets. So I'm talking about your query, your submission, and like your first 10 pages, or full if it's a picture book. So I have that service available, as well as, I can coach people through making a book trailer if that's something that they want to do. And I highly encourage you to do it. I will be presenting this summer at a conference on how and why to make a book trailer. So I just think that visual element, like we talked about earlier, is really important for readers and for agents and publishers to kind of see, what this would look like if we're watching it instead of reading it. So.
No, that sounds great. I mean, go out there and get this book. I've been saving this for the end. I'm sure it's worth it.
Of course.
I said, don't do it, but I had to
Of
let
course.
that out there. But no, really, I appreciate you taking time to come on.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much. It was an honor to speak on your podcast. I've been a longtime listener and listened to several of your episodes, and so it was a joy to be able to chat here. And hopefully something that I've shared will help an author get across the publishing line, or someone that needs some encouragement on how to become your own hero by reading Worth It.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you hit the subscribe button, it'll help us out a lot. Thanks again.